Hello, good evening, and welcome to the fourth edition of Montague Island Discs. And we've got some great guests with us tonight, and I'm sure we're going to have lots of fun, and it'll probably go on longer than an hour. Now, when I when I get a new guest author on, I always have a read of the on the bio on Amazon or on their website. Now, this particular guest tonight has probably got the longest biography on Amazon that you've ever seen. She's a retired journalist, a freelance copywriter, and a copy editor. She writes crime fiction in the Ted Darling crime series and under the name of L.M. Krier. And the crime books are set in her hometown of Stockport on the edge of Greater Manchester. And there's a number of books, I think 15 in the series, with 16 coming very soon.
16 coming later this month.
Great.
We hope.
They're all available in ebook and paperback format. And the series prequel, The First Time Ever, is also available as an audiobook read by Christopher Corcoran. Now, she's a former journalist, as I say, working as both a criminal court and coroner's court reporter. She's also worked as a case tracker for the Crown Prosecution Service and for a firm investing irregularities in offshore finance. Her other jobs have included owning and running a holiday riding centre and acting as a charity mugger, lying in wait to sign up shoppers for a wildlife charity. She secured her first major writing contract at the age of 16 when she sold a television piece to a Hollywood production company for what seemed at the time to be a fortune. And her newspaper editor father claimed it was more than he had ever been paid for a single piece of writing. Her interests centre around nature and wildlife and encompass dogs, wild camping and organic gardening. She lives in the Auvergne, you have to forgive my pronunciation, region of central France, and she holds dual French and British nationality. Her current dogs are two rescued border collies, and I'm sure we'll hear from them at some stage. Now, she writes also as Tottie Limejuice, which is just an amazing name, and she's published 6 books in the Selva Pig memoir series, and a great series that is. She also writes numerous travelogues as Tottie Limejuice's The Tottie Travels series, Hobbit House in Italy, Two Jills and a Tots, and Pride Comes Before a Bedbug. In addition, she's produced a humorous look behind the scenes of novel writing, No Girl on This Train, jointly written with Kate Pill. She also writes children's fiction, mystery adventure as LMK, the dog with the golden eyes. So there we go. So a very good evening and welcome to Leslie Krier. How are you, Leslie?
I'm absolutely fine, thank you. I'll just say, to save time in case people wonder, almost everybody calls me Tots or Tottie these days, so I answer best to Tots.
Yeah. All right, Tots, that's fine. So would you like to, well, first of all, did I miss anything out on your introduction?
My shoe size, I think I didn't put on
there. Great. So would you like to introduce your guests that you've brought with you to go on the island?
Would, very much indeed. I first say a big hello to Dean Cox, who's one of my big readers and has become a good friend on internet. But now to my superstar guest, who is Karen Corcoran. Karen and I knew one another as teenagers when we both worked in the same writing centre, weekends, evenings, school holidays, sometimes when we should have been at school, but let's not talk about that. And as these things happen with teenagers, you move on, you lose touch, and I lost touch with Karen for many years. And then one day with ones of the internet, I happened to see this article about the first ever mounted policewoman allowed into the hallowed Manchester and Salford Police, which is now the Greater Manchester Police. And I didn't immediately recognise the name, Corcoran. Didn't mean anything to me, but I thought, hang on, I know the first policewoman, and then I saw a comment from somebody called Laura saying, this article's about my mum. And I said, in that case, I know who it
Wow.
is. So Laura mentioned to her mum that I'd commented on this. Karen then got back in touch with me. By that time, I think I'd written a couple of the Ted Darling series, but with no police input, no police consultant on board. So Karen very kindly said that she would become one of my alpha readers and my police consultant, because I do things a little bit differently from many other authors. Every single chapter I write, as I finish it, I send it to a special panel of 4 alpha readers. One is Karen, who has the final say on police matters, because it's important. I'm not trying to write a documentary, but I hate big mistakes. So often I'll phone her, we'll have a long discussion, and I'll say, this is what I want to do. And she'll say, no, you can't. So I say, well, no, find me a way that I can do it and make it sound like it could happen. So that's how we work. I've got another one who is has a master's degree in English literature, so she looks at the structure of it. I have a very good friend, Jill, in Italy, who's she's from Yorkshire. She's a tyke, and you know they're famous for speaking the truth. She is the one who will say to me, "It's shite, do it again." You know, whereas others might be slightly more tactful. They might say, "Well,
Yeah.
no." She tells me how it is. It's very, very, very important we're working with those. So this is Karen, very, very good friend, very, very pleased to be reunited with her. And if you believe in such things as, you know, karma, fate, serendipity, any of those things, we didn't know one another for quite a chunk of our adult life, so we had a lot of catching up to do. And one day she happened to say to me that her husband was wanting to go into narrating and producing audiobooks, and he wanted to do a sample for his website. Could he do a chapter of Ted? And when I finished, you know, falling on the floor and offering up prayers to any deities I'd previously never believed in, I said, oh God, yes, fantastic, please, please, please. So her husband is Christopher Corcoran, who reads the first book in the series the first time ever, fantastically, I have to say. Big plug for the audiobook, and that's what they do, and Karen also is involved. So that's my special guest tonight.
And here we are tonight in the office where that actual audiobook was recorded.
Wow. A very good evening, Karen. Is there anything you would like to respond to Leslie's comments?
No, that is pretty much how it happened.
Brilliant.
And can I just say also, Christopher is a retired television director. The prospect of me, little me with my little book, having to sort of direct into what I wanted was one of the most intimidating things I ever come across. But he was an absolute dream to work with, I have to say, absolutely perfect. It was just a question of a suggestion. How do you see this character? Ted in particular. The thing with Ted is he's not a big swaggering bowl full of himself copper. He's actually quite a modest and very quiet little man. So I wanted to get this across, and it was absolutely fantastic. It worked really, really well. I'm thrilled skinny with it. So a little grovel there, big thanks to
That's great.
Christopher and to Gary, the introduction.
That's great. And we've also got Deems with us. So Deems, feel free to jump in and ask any questions at any point. You're quite welcome to just jump in if there's anything you want to know or want to add. So that'll be great. And Deems is also a friend of Leslie's.
Thank you. I will do. I'm kind of a newbie to this, so I'm just sort of taking it all in and thinking about it at the moment.
Wonderful. So let's start then with, first of all, Leslie, do you want to, or Tottie, I should say, I keep calling you Leslie. Tottie, do you want to tell us a little bit, first of all, say about the last book you wrote and the one that you've just finished, which is due out later this month. So do you want to tell us a little bit about them two first of all?
Yeah, with the crime fiction books, I will tend to see something perhaps on the news, perhaps on, I do still watch the British television, something that's current, and think, oh yeah, that's interesting. You know, there could be a storyline behind that. And then the next part of the equation always is to have a long telephone conversation with Karen to say, this is this idea that I've got for a book. How are we going to make it work in police terms? And the book before last, we'd left a few little loose threads deliberately at the end of a book called The Cuckoo is a Pretty Bird. And the book is actually about the crime of cuckooing, which I'd seen about on the television. And it's often young people. They'll move in on somebody very vulnerable, somebody perhaps with learning difficulties or old, isolated, and they'll use their home to live in, to hide drugs in, all that kind of thing. And it's not all that uncommon. So we did that one. And then for the one that I've just finished, which is called The End of the Line, we had quite a lot of loose threads from that previous one to tie up. So it's been, and it's, you know, the old story, you know, police never have holidays. They can never have a holiday, because as soon as they go on holiday, you know, something dire will happen. And that's what this book is about. Ted actually tries to go away on a holiday and then gets involved in all kinds of things and pulled back into all kinds of a situation. But always, you know, I have to stress, some crime books I read, you know, I know it's fiction. I understand it's fiction, but some of them are so far-fetched that you think, oh, come on, please. So Karen is the one I rely on all the time. As I say, the benchmark, if you like, is, okay, it's unusual, but can we slip something in that means in this circumstance it could possibly happen? And that's the basis on which we do it, you know.
Great. So is there ever...
And I think we succeed pretty well.
Is there ever an occasion, Tottie, when you go to Karen and there's something that you know that there is no way around it, you just got to forget about?
We've never come to blows yet, have we? It's been very, very interesting, of course, because Karen is similar age to me. She's younger, actually. You swine, you're younger than me, I think, by a couple of years. But anything that... Okay. But anything that has come about since her serving time, she's in all these groups on social media with the police officers, so she can go in there and say, okay, in this scenario, how could we make this work? Because of course things evolve all the time. They really do evolve all the time. So we can usually find a workaround. Usually, we you know, like I say, we haven't come to blows yet. We're still speaking most of the time.
When you say serving time, sounds a bit...
Yeah, you get less for murder.
Sounds a bit dodgy when you say when she's serving time, yeah. But that's great.
I think what Tots is trying to say is that I've been retired now some time and things have moved on greatly. But what I do is I go back to current officers, people who I was friends with when I was still there, and I will just throw a question to them. Could this happen? Is this how you do things still? And they will come back to me. So we try and stay as true to how it is now as we can. But then at the end of the day, it's a story and people want to be engaged in that story. And we don't want to get bogged down in, oh, well, no, actually, they wouldn't do it that way. It would be this way. So we try and keep the story the main focus. But if I really do think, well, that, you know, that sit well with me, then I will tell her.
Yeah, she does.
Great.
Yes.
What the readers, at the end of the day, that's what readers want. They want a bit of not exact reality, but they want to believe that it could happen.
Realism is the thing. You know, at the end of the day, it's up to me to find the way to just put in the possibility that it could happen. The other thing that I do, I don't ever put anything in the books which date stamps them, not even makes and models of cars or phones or anything. So if anybody says, oh, that would never happen in 2000, I can say, well, actually, that's not when we are. You know, it happens in a time of its own. So that's very useful, though.
Yeah, and I think there's a word as well that's used for that kind of book as well, isn't it? Faction. I think Edward Rutherford he used that a lot, faction, because it was fiction based on fact.
Yeah. The other thing I do, Twitter is a very good source of finding people. So if ever I need somebody with a particular special skill, I fling out a request on there. Can anybody help me with da-da-da-da-da? And through it, I've made some very, very good contacts. I had one book. I also have very good friends who live quite close to me in France who are retired prison officers. So they come up with some ideas sometime. And they said to me one time, you really should do an arson, because the arsonists tend to be some of the cleverest and most devious prisoners that they ever have to deal with. Very, very, very high intellect often. So we did an arson one, and I went on Twitter and asked, and I found a fire dog handler.
Wow.
He was very, very, very interesting and very, very helpful, because, you know, they can bring dogs in and the dogs can indicate even what kind of accelerant has been used and where it's been put and all that stuff. So this very kind chap, and he sent me videos of his dog working, so we got all that authentic stuff in. I also spoke to a victim recovery dog handler, police handler, whose dogs find bodies, even bodies that have been buried for some time. So, you know, I use that kind of thing because I love research. So I do a lot of that kind of stuff as well.
Great, that's wonderful. So I give our listeners and people that are watching this an idea of what the last book that's out, and also your next book that's coming out. So what we'll do now is we will think about our little desert island off the Cumbrian coast, Montague Island, as made famous by Mike Craven in the Curator book. So that's the island that we're using. So we'll look first of all at your 7 books that you've chosen to take with you. Now, as well as taking your 7 choices, you also get a full, an imaginary sort of full set of paperbacks of all the Mike Craven or M.W. Craven of all these paperback books. So first of all, Tottie, what's your first book?
Right, the first book is one from childhood, and it's called The Weird Stone of Brisingamen by Alan Garner. And it's a little bit sort of Tolkien, C.S. Lewis-ish, but it's set in Cheshire, my home county. And my late father was a newspaper editor and a book reviewer, film critic, theatre, you know, all that kind of stuff. And he got a review copy of the book, which he gave to me, because I sometimes used to do reviews, you know, even though I was only little. Yeah, write this and you keep writing a book review. Okay, Dad. And I read the book, and it was absolutely delightful, because it's set in modern-ish times, 1960s it was written, so set in those times, but it involves real human children in a mythological world. So, you know, kids that children my age could relate with, set in a kind of Tolkien setting. And it was absolutely marvellous, wonderful. And I was lucky enough to meet Alan Garner 2 or 3 times. Lovely man. He was always very kind and always remembered my name. And he used to write to me, and he used beautiful calligraphy, autograph the books. I always read, but I became obsessed with this. I used to go up Alderley Edge looking for all the places mentioned and climbing around. And he impressed me very much with the whole writing thing, because, you know, I was, about 12, I think. And, you know, a grown-up person who wrote books for a living, who would speak to me, a child, and write me letters. That was fantastic. It you know, it really, I love the book. Weird Stone of Brisingamen. Fabulous.
Good choice, good choice. Now we've also got Julia, who's just come up, one of our other Bookend members. So Julia, if you've got a good evening and if you've got any questions while we're going through, please feel free to jump in and ask. So now, Karen, what's your first book?
Right. My first book was actually recommended to me by my father, and it was written by Howard Spring, called Shabby Tiger. And Howard Spring's novels were written about Manchester. And I think that's why my father enjoyed them. And therefore he passed on his love of reading and also his love of this particular author. So when I was asked to come up with this list of books, I had to include a Howard Spring novel. And it's actually made me now go back and reread one of his novels, which isn't this particular one, but a very famous Howard Spring novel called My Son, My Son. And it really is, it's of a different age. I think he died in the 60s, something like that. But he was prolific in the sort of the war years and into the 50s.
And was that general fiction or was it a particular genre?
It is general fiction, slightly historical, set in Victorian times, and evoked all the sort of images of an area that I knew very, very well. So I felt connected to the stories.
Definitely. And it's great that on both for both of those books that you both sort of mentioned as your first books, you've got connections with, with your parents as well, which must be, it adds that extra sort of touch to it, doesn't it, as well? So that's great. So Tottie, what's your second book?
My second book is John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath. I did English and French literature for A-level because I went to school occasionally. And the set books for both were really pretty dire. But with English, you got a subsidiary list that you could pick from. And on that was The Grapes of Wrath, John Steinbeck. And I read that and I thought it was absolutely fantastic. All about the Great Depression in America and moving to find a better life, going west to California. And I got very, very, very wrapped up. I went on to read, I think, just about everything else that Steinbeck ever wrote. And he became really one of my #1 top authors. And it is one I do like to go back to time and time again, really. And just as a little aside, I also love his Of Mice and Men. And I got my mother very interested in that particular book. And my mother, before she died, had dementia. And one of the things that she could always remember, sometimes she couldn't remember, well, she didn't know what day it was or anything like that, but she always remembered that quote from Lenny, the chap in the book who is a little bit simple. And they're always talking about the future life. And he always says, tell about the rabbits, George, tell about the rabbits. And if my mother was getting very fractious and, we couldn't calm her down, I'd just say rabbits, and she'd say that line back to me every single time. She always remembered it. So that's powerful writing. So John Steinbeck for the second.
It is. That's great. And I think you nominated, actually, we've also got that as one of our possible book choices in the bookends for March. So there's a good chance that quite a few of us will be reading that in March as well. So that's great. And what's your second one, Karen?
Oh, well, mine again. We must have got our heads together with this, Tots. But mine was, again, a book that I had to read at school. And it was My Family and Other Animals by Gerald Durrell. I loved it. I just loved the whole idea of it. And it took me to Corfu on several occasions because of that book. So it had a special place in my heart and I had to include it.
Definitely, yeah. And I think
the BBC adaptation of it is absolutely beautiful as well. I've watched that time and time again. It's just really, really so true to the book. And you can, as you read the book, even if you hadn't seen the television program, you can conjure it all up. And then you see the television program and they kind of match, which doesn't very often happen with books and adaptations of them.
That's true, very true. And it's one of these stories that just keeps coming back every time, you know, every generation, really, isn't it? People, you know, it just keeps getting read and read and read. So I think it's one of them books that'll keep on going the same. So that's great. And Tottie, what's your third book that you're going to take with you on the island?
I'd have to have an Agatha Christie because I'm a big reader of Christie. I've read them all. So I went for Murder on the Orient Express.
Great.
Because it's a very clever one. And I've got a significant birthday coming up next year, 21. And my best friend and I are planning to go on the Orient Express to Venice as a birthday trip. And because I write these travelogues, wherever I go, I write a little travelogue about it. I absolutely have to, murder writer on the Orient Express. It has to be done, doesn't it? I mean, it really has.
It does.
So that's my Christie,
Great.
the Orient Express.
Yeah, that's great. And as I say, you're going to bring it to life. So what?
Yes, I hope so. I hope so.
What better than that? That's great. And what about you, Karen? What's your next one?
Well, I've cheated a little bit on this one because if I'm honest, this is actually a set of books called Earth's Children by the writer Jean M. Auel. I think it's Auel, how you say her surname. The first book in that series is called Clan of the Cave Bear. So if you were going to pull me up on, you know, this is a set of books, then I'd have to choose the first one.
If it's available as a set, you're allowed to take the set.
Well,
then
in that case, I'll take the set because I started reading these and I just had to get the next in the series, then the next in the series. I absolutely loved it. Okay. It's about not even medieval, primeval man before man could even speak.
Caveman.
And yes, I just loved it. Really, really engrossing books. So if I was on the desert island, then Tots wouldn't see me because I would have my nose in these.
And when did those books come out roughly?
I'm thinking probably 60s, 70s, that sort of time. Not sure if they're on in print anymore. I'm sure they'll be available somewhere, but I do recommend them.
Great.
Love them.
Sounds very interesting. And Tottie, what's your fourth book?
Well, if we're talking about desert islands and isolation and things, it really has to be Lord of the Flies, doesn't it? Because that's got everything. It's a very, very clever book, really very, very clever, because, you know, it examines sort of what human nature is all about, really, in the rawest way, and to depict it through young, seemingly innocent boys is very, very clever. And of course it has murder in it and all kinds of goes on in it. And the early black and white film, not the more modern American thing, which is not the thing at all, but the early black and white film was absolutely fantastic. And the idea of having the choir boys as, you know, the worst of them, and when they first come marching up the beach singing the Kyrie eleison, it's utterly chilling. Very, very good book, Lord of the Flies. Don't worry, Karen, it's not me swatting up on how to murder people on a desert island. It just happens to be a favourite book of mine.
Watch it, Karen, watch it. That's great. And what's your next one, Karen?
Well, this is it's a cheat, really, but as a girl who loved horse riding, and that was my whole sort of raison d'etre as a child, when the book called Riders came out by Jilly Cooper, I had to go and buy it.
And
then I had to read every book afterwards because I got hooked into the story. I'm not going to recommend this as a book for anyone else to read, but you know, I loved it. Loved it.
And the marketing plan got you.
I think I was 16 when the book came out, maybe 17. And I was totally horse mad. I think I'm probably about 50% horse and 50% Jack Russell as a blood type. But my grandmother bought it for me, thinking it was going to be really lovely. It was Riders, and she gave it to me. And I have to tell you that I'm sure that my O-level grades and A-level grades went down significantly because I spent my whole time reading it.
Quite controversial, wasn't it? At the time?
It really is. It's a good book. I read it too.
Yeah, quite
I have
controversial.
to say I've got all of the other ones as well now, but don't tell anyone.
The marketing definitely worked on that one, didn't it? You both bought the rest of the set, so somebody got that one right. And what's your next one, Tottie? I think we're on number 6 now, aren't we?
Don't ask me about numbers. I don't do numbers. I do
5.
language.
Sorry, number 5 we're on.
Oh, okay. It's Jane Harper's The Dry. What I like about a book is if it gives, I don't like the expression, but you know what I mean, it gives you the feels. You feel what's happening in the book. Yeah. I'm in a part of central France that knows about cold. I mean, we really, really do get some very cold winters. I was snowed up. It was freezing cold, and I read The Dry, which is about a heat wave in Australia, and I felt hot. I was chucking covers off the bed thinking, flipping heck, it's warm. Now, that's powerful writing. It was a very, very good book, extremely well read, and I've read a lot, several of her other ones since. Very good writer, The Dry.
Yeah, when you can get a book that gives them sort of emotions out, it's you're on a good thing there, don't you?
Yeah, and especially because that was a very physical thing. You can feel angry and sad and happy, but actually to feel that you're hot when it's nearly 3 foot of snow outside, that's powerful writing. Very powerful writing.
That's great. Yeah. And what about you, Karen? What's your 5th one?
My 5th one was The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, and I read this some time ago, well before, I don't know if it's Netflix or somebody has made a series of it, but I was totally engrossed in the book and thoroughly enjoyed it, and I loved the whole dystopian idea that it brought forward. And just recently I've read the follow-on, which gone out my head, but anyway, you can look it up. But yes, very, very interesting ideas, and I thoroughly enjoyed reading it.
Great. Did you watch the Netflix series as well?
Subsequently, yes, and spent a lot of time delving back into the book going, I don't remember that. But that, I think they took artistic license and expanded the story somewhat, and then took it even further. So in some ways, yes, still a good series, but I would recommend everyone to actually read the book.
Yeah. I think that's with most of them kind of films, isn't it? If you change it that much, you always better going back to the book. But good choice. And what about you, Tottie? What's your number 6?
I've chosen Elizabeth is Missing. I think the author is Emma Healy, if I remember correctly. Very, very, very powerful book. Again, it really made me feel things. For those that don't know it, it's very unusual in the crime genre because the main character is an elderly lady with dementia who spends practically the entire book trying to find her friend Elizabeth because she's very confused. And as I mentioned before, my mother had dementia. Mercifully, my mother wasn't mobile. So she couldn't go off wandering about and doing the kind of things that happens in this book. But it was so very interesting, and it was extremely well portrayed. The things that the main character, who's called, I think, Maud, I can't just remember Maud, I think, the way she's behaving and the questions she's asking and the constant repetition, it really struck a chord with me. And then, of course, it was done for television with Glenda Jackson playing the lead. Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. That's a very good book. It's a bit harrowing in a sense, especially if you haven't had experience of people with dementia, because you don't really quite realise how much the repetition starts to wind you down. But yeah, a very good read. Very good read.
Grind you down after a bit. That's right. Yeah. And what about you, Carol? What's your number 6?
Well, my number 6 is a book by a lady called Fiona Valpy, who maybe might not be known to many of your listeners or viewers or whatever. I discovered her by accident, courtesy of Amazon, who said, "Oh, you've read this book, you might like this."
Yeah.
And I read this book. It's called The Beekeeper's Promise. And I've got to admit, since then, I have downloaded and read the books that she's ever written.
Wow.
Thoroughly enjoyed them. They are set in France, but generally during the war. But not all of her books are, but this particular one was. And I highly recommend them. I thoroughly enjoyed discovering her as a writer and enjoyed all her stories. So yeah, that was my, and I've got to say, Tots stole Elizabeth is Missing from me.
Oh.
I thought I'd come in with another current author.
Very good book.
And this book that you mentioned, was it set in the Second World War?
Yeah.
Yeah. And when was that book sort of released? Was that?
I think it's quite current.
Quite current.
It's quite recent. Quite a recent story.
Yeah.
So yeah, highly recommend it.
Good, that's wonderful. And so we're now down to the last book, the 7, that you will both be taking to the island to keep you busy over the time that you're stranded on the island. So what's yours, Tottie? What's your last book?
I'm doing something a little bit different, and it is a bit of a plug for a friend's book. This is The Diary of a Single Parent Abroad by Jill Pennington, who is my very good friend who lives in Italy. And it's a very good book, and I want to take it for a very good reason. I do often read it again, because sometimes, you get a bit of the pity me's. You think, oh, life is hard on this desert island, and gosh, I'm having a hard time with it. Flipping heck, read Jill's book, and then you'll know what a hard time really is. Long story short, she was supposed to be moving to start a new life in Italy with husband and three really very young children. And not to give away too much of the book, but when they bought this house, there was a lot of work to be done to it and so on. Husband then said, oh, well, actually, I'm not going to be here because I've got another woman and I'm going to be with her.
Great.
That's it, you're on your own, good luck.
Wow.
So she was young kids to bring up, and no possibility of working full time because in Italy the children only go to school in the mornings, so childcare issues. And the things she did to put square meals in those kids' bellies, and she set to and rebuilt the house herself. I mean, literally stuff like that. So if I'm sitting there feeling a bit sorry for myself on the island, I'll give myself a slap. I'll read that book and say, cheer up. You have not got a hard life at all. So,
it's very
Diary of a Single Parent Abroad. Yeah.
What was that?
grounding.
Yeah.
Grounding.
Yeah,
It's a very grounding book. It really sort of brings you back to the core, and you think, I mean, I have struggles at the moment, but I have other people to help me with them most of the time. But when you're really out there on your own and trying to pull it all together, and it just really can snap you back and think, hey, life isn't actually so bad.
That's
yeah.
And when was this set, Tottie? When sort of what era are we talking about?
She moved to Italy probably 13 years ago, and she wrote it after that because, as I say, at the time she didn't quite know what life held in store for her. And she, it's an overused word, but she's inspirational. She really is, because 3 hungry young kids, and some days the best you do is pick nettles and make net pesto for them and cook a load of pasta because it was cheap and have nettles because they're rich in iron and that kind of stuff. And it puts life into perspective for you very, very much.
Definitely. Yeah. So we complain about wearing a mask or whatever.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
You say it brings it into perspective.
Yeah.
And what about you, Karen? What's your 7th book?
My seventh book is The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry by Rachel Joyce. And because Tots had stolen Elizabeth is Missing from me, I remembered this book that being in a similar vein, really, but the story of an elderly man who sets off on a journey. I can't remember if he was actually diagnosed, but definitely the signs of dementia. And off he goes to decide the length of Britain. And it's so beautifully written. It's such a lovely, lovely story that I again, another recommended book.
Yeah, great. That's good, and it's great over such a variety in the, in the 7 books that you've chosen. So you're not all like, you're not just sort of all both stuck to sort of one genre or one particular age, shall we say. You've spread your choices across, so that's great. So you both got your 7 books packed and ready to go onto the island. So next we've got a favorite music CD, or some form of music. So what would you take with you, Tottie? Because I know you're a big music fan, and a lot of your
I am,
books
yes,
have music titles. So
absolutely.
what would you take?
Every book title is from a song. For music, I would take Buffy St. Marie's album Up Where We Belong, because of her composer's version of the cover song is stunning. I first discovered Buffy having seen the film Soldier Blue, and she sings the title track for that. And I like the folky indigenous type of music very, very much. So I bought several of her albums on CD, and that remains one of my favorites for that cover version. I mean, yeah, the one with whoever it was, the duo that had the big hit with it, yeah, that was very nice, very twee and very commercial. But Buffy herself singing it is fantastic. It's stripped back, acoustic, really, really nice. And I like a lot of the stuff that she writes and that she sings about. And like I say, it's the whole indigenous peoples kind of thing. So that would be my music choice, Buffy St. Marie.
Great, interesting. What about you, Karen? What would you be dancing away to on the island?
Oh, I had such trouble deciding which album I would take with me. I sat down with a pile of old LPs from my sort of, not my childhood, but maybe, teens and 20s, and shuffled them around and really, really struggled. But actually wrote down in the end, Don't Shoot Me, I'm Only the Piano Player by Elton John.
Right.
And that's partly because I thoroughly enjoy Bernie Taupin's lyrics. I think he's a master lyricist.
Yeah.
And I also think Elton John is a very, very good composer. And this was early on. This was before Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. It was earlier than that. I had discovered, I actually met Elton John one day.
Wow, what was that?
Really? Well, I was a very, very young police officer patrolling the city centre of Manchester, and I was very close to a local radio station called Piccadilly Radio.
Yeah.
And he came out and walked towards me and asked me directions. And can I just say, the first disappointment was he was smaller than me, and I'm not that tall. But I understood why in later years he always wore the big platform shoes. But I was completely enamored of his music. And so I was flustered by this approach from him and gave him his directions and let him wend his way off to get a train or whatever he was getting. And then stood back and thought, oh my, I've just met Elton John.
Yeah, wow, that's great. And that album, it's got a great title, the album, but it's not one that you don't really hear that much of.
No.
You hear a couple of songs, but you don't hear that much. So that's a good choice and something a little bit different. So now we're going to, as I say, to be able to play these CDs, it is limited power on the island, so you only get about an hour a day, so you don't have to fight over whose CD you're going to be playing. But also you get a choice of DVD. So you got to be careful with this one, because if you watch a film, you may have to watch it over 2 days. So, but you might choose to have a DVD in a concert or whatever you may want to choose. So anyway, what's yours, Tottie? What DVD or film would you take with you?
Okay, I've chosen possibly the most politically incorrect film ever made. And it'll surprise some people, but it's
not some
long
others.
It's long been a favourite of mine. My party trick used to be that I knew the entire soundtrack off by heart, songs and dialogue. It's Blazing Saddles, Mel Brooks' Blazing Saddles.
I would never have guessed.
with Cleavon Little and Gene Wilder. And I love it. Lots of course, now it's very, very politically incorrect. It's taken to be so racist and sexist and religionist and everything. But if you look beneath the veneer, it's a very clever parody of all of the isms, because it makes fun of everybody. Nobody is spared. No race, no colour, no creed. Nobody is spared. And at the end of the day, Cleavon Little, black actor, he appeared in it. You know, he clearly wasn't offended enough not to appear in it.
Yeah.
And the reason I actually used to know the full soundtrack by heart, genuinely, honestly, word for word, across my heart, when I had the riding centre in Wales for 8 years, I did riding holidays for unaccompanied children, which was a lot of fun and a lot of hard work. And I did have some help, but a lot of the time it was just me, and I did, you know, all the cooking, the cleaning, the pastoral care, the horses, the rides, everything. So of an evening, the children were allowed to watch television, including my videotape, it was in those, my video collection. The parents would have had a dicky fit because some of it was, you know, X-rated, but whatever. And I'd be in the kitchen adjoining the recreation room where they were. And I'd be listening while I was washing up and making packed lunches and all that. I would be listening night after night after night to the entire soundtrack of Blazing Saddles. So, yeah. Sorry, Karen, you'd have to put up with that, but I don't care. And Madeleine Kahn in it. Fantastic, you know, fantastic acting. Really, really, really very good.
We'll find
Blazing
out
Saddles.
We'll find out what Karen thinks of that if she chooses a pair of headphones to take as a luxury item.
I have no problem with Blazing Saddles. I love the film. And yeah, great choice. Great choice.
So what's yours, Karen?
Well, I probably not thought this through very well, but I decided to go with The Greatest Showman because I loved it. And I know it had very mixed reviews, but I come from a family who are all in musical theatre. So what Tots didn't tell you was, okay, my hubby went on to do audiobooks, or certainly wanted to get down that road. But prior to that, he was a performer himself, and in fact, a performer in musical theatre.
Right.
And both our children have gone into the same field.
Right.
So a film like The Greatest Showman,
in the blood,
done in such a modern way. I can't wait to actually see it appear on stage, because it will do one day. But I love the film. But if I'm taking the DVD, I want the one I've got with all the extras at the end.
Yeah, we'll let you take that one.
You can't have longer on the electricity than me.
Yeah,
you've got to share.
You might have to play it over 3 or 4 days if it's got a lot of extras with it. So now here is the interesting one. So you're going to be on this. Who knows how long you're going to be on the desert island for? But what would be your luxury item? So come on, Tottie, what's your... Karen's looking embarrassed already. What's your luxury item, Tottie?
I'm going to pick a great big plentiful supply of very good French artisan soap, because I have the driest skin in living memory, and all that, you know, salt water and sun, I would be peeling like a lizard. So just about say 5 or 6 miles from here, there's an artisan factory that makes soap, and it's the best soap I've ever had. I don't need any creams or anything with this soap. It has things like argan oil and oat milk and all that kind of stuff in it. So that's as many of those as I could cram into my suitcase or whatever I escape with. That's what I want. Very good
can I just
French
ask
soap.
a question?
Of course you can, Deems.
This desert island you're going to, you do realise it's somewhere off England, and it's going to be wet and cold. So
Yes,
I don't think you're going to have any problem with sun.
Well, you never know, you see, you never know.
But I suppose global warming.
I'm an eternal optimist. Yeah, but the cold weather also is very, very, very drying for lizard skin. In winter, I mean, I'm practically sloughing. So yeah, I need my French soap.
Interesting choice.
And Karen would be glad too, because he'd like as a deodorant.
Interesting choice. I don't think we'll probably get anybody else choosing that, because that is a bit out there, but very interesting. And what about you, Karen? Come on, what's the...
Oh, now you see, Joe, you know in advance what I picked. I might change my mind. But anyway, no, I'll probably have to go with it. I have a hairdryer, which is also a brush. You know, this doesn't stay all lovely and straight on its own. So I would be taking my electric hairdryer. I'm not sure if that's allowed.
It is
so
allowed.
maybe we should change it to one of those pedal bikes that can generate electricity.
But that's 2 items.
No, change it.
Yeah, but yeah, if you take the hairdryer, then Tottie's not going to be able to watch all the film.
I know.
Listen to all of the CD.
You can stop me watching Blazing Saddles. It doesn't matter. I'll just recite the soundtrack to you.
But that is great to hear all of your choices. Tottie was having problems with the internet, and we weren't sure how it would go tonight. So she did send me a list of both of your choices, but I was determined not to look at it because I wanted the surprise of hearing all the stories that go with them as well. So that's great to hear the choices. So you've got all your bags packed. You've got the Mike Craven book, paperback books to go with you as well, and you're off now on your not a desert island, on your remote island off the coast of Cumbria, Montague Island. So, Deems or Julia, do you have any questions for our guests?
Yes, Tottie, what did you do with Dad's hearing aid batteries that I've lost today?
Deems knows that I am the master of losing things. So she always assumes I might be able to find other people's things. Some time ago, Karen, you'll probably remember, when we were thrashing out the storyline for Ted 16, we decided there was too much for one book. So I said, that's all right, I'll keep all the notes because there's another book in there. Where did I put them? They're obviously under the missing
under the hearing aid batteries.
But I still haven't found them. I can't, I am absolutely, it's one of my, if you go on these game shows where you can do your special skill, well, my specialist skill is losing stuff.
I believe I was told not to mention this, Tottie, but I believe you lost something else recently.
Goodness knows. I lose things all the time.
A fence?
A fence. I deny that. No. That's just no. Yeah.
We heard about the episode with the fence, and I was told, don't mention the fence.
The highways department come round. I live in a very, very rural place, but I have to say, I mean, tax is very high in France. It's one of the highest taxed countries there is, certainly in Europe. but you do get a lot for your money, and they're very good at things like road maintenance and so on. And they periodically come round and cut the verges and tidy up all the hedges and all the rest of it. But what they cut a load of mine. They actually cut too far into my land. They're not allowed to cut that far in. And I had a lovely little spinney growing for wildlife, and they've hacked all that down. But they've also caught, oh, long story, boring for most people, but my next door neighbours have a dog which strays all the time, which is a real nuisance because it comes and winds my dogs up. So I'd put up a great long thing of chicken net that it can't get through. And when the big tractor, you know, with the big grab arm on the side came along, cutting, it had caught the fence post and just chewed all the chicken wire fence up, mangled it, left it in great big holes, and they never told me. They never said anything. So I'm currently trying to get hold of the foreman, and I've left him several strong messages, but he seems to be avoiding me. So I think my reputation precedes me. So if he doesn't give me the satisfaction I crave, he's going to die very horribly in the next
book. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant.
He's going to be murdered by his own brush cutter.
Yeah, that's it. So just to finish off, do you want to just give us a recap on where you can, where our listeners or viewers can get your books and when the next book is actually out? Because I know there was a bit of talk today about, well, the book might be out this month or next month. So perhaps you can just fill everybody in on the current situation.
I'm still hoping book 16 is going to be out before the end of this month. We hit a slight technical hiccup. I won't go into it in much detail, particularly because it's Brexit that's caused the problem. It never occurred to me. I use a formatter in the UK, and it didn't penetrate my brain that even digital transactions are now subject to a whole load of... Anyway,
wow.
Finally, I think we've solved a problem. But yeah, all of the books are on Amazon, paperbacks and Kindles. The memoirs series under the name of Tottie Limejuice, Sell the Pig, because everybody always asks, you know, when you live in a foreign country, people always say, why did you move to France? Most people move to France in a nuclear family, mother, father, 2.4 children. I did it with my alcoholic, manic, depressive brother and a mother of 89 with dementia. So it's not kind of your normal story. And then the Ted books, the Ted Darling Crime series, this is the prequel, the first time ever. They're also all on Amazon. These are... The Tottie Limejuice ones are loosely termed travel memoirs because it's sort of partly biographical and partly travel in relocating to another country. They are about to go wide in ebook format, which means they will shortly be available also on Apple, Google Play, Kobo, all the other things. But for now, the TED books are staying exclusive to Amazon, which means they're in Kindle Unlimited, so people can actually read them for nothing. And don't forget Karen's husband, Christopher Corcoran, reading the first time ever, fantastically, the voice of Ted. Absolutely, the voice that's always been in my little head
so
when I'm writing.
Is that an Audible release, Tottie?
Yeah, it's available on Audible. Great. And he really has got the accents bob on, and bless him, I did throw him a curveball. Ted's mother is Welsh, and in his boyhood he did learn some Welsh, and including singing a bit in Welsh. And Chris is going steamingly through the book thinking, oh yeah, this is good, this is going really well, sending me chapter by chapter. And then he got to the chapter where Ted is asked to sing in Welsh. So poor old Christopher, I had to write down phonetically for him Welsh pronunciation, and it's very difficult. It is very difficult, and he did a fantastic job, really fantastic job. And that's the children's book. I say children's book, but it's got a very, very wide, the Dog with the Golden Eyes, it's got a very wide and very enthusiastic adult readership too, because it's a real little feel-good book. And there's an interesting backstory to it. It's basically about a small boy who is traumatized by things which have happened to him in his past. And it came to me because, if you remember, there was a murder on Wimbledon Common, wasn't there? Was it Rachel Nickel, I think the lady was called. Yeah, and her little boy witnessed it. And then there was the terrible one, the mother, sister, and little dog who were murdered, and one of the daughters survived. And I thought, I wonder how children recover from something with that. How, I know kids are very resilient, really very resilient, but how do they deal with it? How does it affect them? So I had an idea of writing about a small boy who'd had a traumatic thing and relates to a dog. So it's a, if ever anybody wants, you know, sort of a warm hug of a book, it's The Dog with the Golden Eyes. Not soppy, but you know.
So what is your, I'm presuming you have a website. What's your website? How do people find your website?
Yeah. teddarlingcrimeseries.uk.
Okay. And
no
you've got Facebook. Are you on Twitter as well?
Yes, I'm on Twitter, probably as Tottie Limejuice, I think. And then
Tottie's everywhere.
I'm on, yeah, you're not kidding. I'm on Facebook as me, Leslie Krier Tither. There's also a group for the TED fans called the We Love Ted Darling group, which is hilariously funny.
Of us crazy people.
Really. And if anybody likes Ted, they're entitled to a free badge which says Ted Darling is brilliant. It's a deliberate typo. Because I do merchandise. If anybody wants to read the books, if they just get in touch, I'm quite happy to send them merchandise. So, and signed books and stuff.
And if I was just going to say about signed books, so if anybody wants signed books, what's the situation on getting them from France at the moment?
Well, France is a very civilized country, and it has and always has had a very special, very competitive rate for books and printed material. So although I now have to fill in a customs form, they still go under this special tariff. So the postage costs are very, very attractive indeed still. And I'm quite happy to do that kind of thing.
Great.
Yeah, more than
so we can just get in touch with you through Facebook or Twitter or the website.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely.
And Karen, are we going to see a book from you?
Oh, probably not. I'll leave it to those with the skill.
So you're enjoying retired life?
I am, and I enjoy being an alpha reader. I love finding all the typos, don't I? I'm very good at finding typos. But
you missed a rank change. We all missed Ted introducing himself by the wrong rank in the last one. That shows what lockdown does to you. How long's he been at these?
I'm sorry, Tots, but I'm going to blame my current situation with a flooded house.
Oh God!
As to why I missed that one. But
go on, play the sympathy vote.
So come on, we'll put you on the spot, Karen. What's the funniest mistake well, apart from that one, what's the funniest mistake you've spotted or not spotted?
Oh, that's hard. Come on, I need time to think about that one. But,
she's afraid of getting murdered in the next book.
Yeah,
I am.
She doesn't want to give you too much ammunition.
But I was very proud to be featured in one of the books.
Great.
Because my time in the police force was on the mounted section, and Tots very kindly brought the mounted into one of the stories. So
which book was that, Tottie? If anybody wants to have a read.
Goodness me, you don't expect me to remember things like that.
Can you remember, Karen?
Come on, there's been 15 and I've read 16. So.
Viewers and listeners, simple.
Oh, hang on.
Read all 16.
One with Sykes Reservoir on the cover. It's that one. What the heck is it called? No, I can't remember.
Put you on the spot there, haven't I, both of you?
They are, as you so rightly said, they are all song title names. Oh, hang on, I've got the book. It might tell me. Has it got the list?
We're hopeless.
Put you on the spot. Don't worry
It's
about
funny,
it.
Joe. What happens is sometimes people will ask about, you know, something that happened in book 2 or book 3, and I can see Tot's eyes kind of. She goes, I can't remember. I only wrote it.
Just a thing on that, Tottie. How do you remember the excuse me, the storyline? Do you keep extensive notes on all your characters, or how do you? Stop laughing.
I make extensive notes. I then probably lose them.
So you rely on
I
Karen
wing
again.
It has to be said. I wing it sometimes. But I'll tell you what, it's got Sykes Reservoir on the cover, and it's the one where Ted does the moon dance. I remember that bit. I can't remember the title.
So,
I could go and look in the bookcase.
Viewers and listeners, please send on a postcard to Tottie, her of France, the name of the book.
That's terrible, isn't it?
I can remember some of the stories. I could go and look in the bookcase. It's only just behind me. Never
Don't
mind.
worry, it'll give them a chance to explore all the books to be able to find that one. So that's great.
Yeah, I'll give a prize, a badge and a bottle opener if somebody can remind me what the title is.
There you go. The challenge is set. So just comment on the...
I always do a little competition for people to guess the song title for each book, and a special plug for Doreen Brotherton. She's fantastic at guessing the book titles. She's got most of them, not every single one. She's got most of them, and sometimes I go for quite obscure ones. So I give them a clue. I tell them, you know, the type of song and approximately the date of it. But with Karen talking about Elton John earlier, the first book I wrote in the series was actually called Baby's Got Blue Eyes. So that's, you know, an Elton John.
Yeah.
And sometimes it'll be a line from the song rather than the title. Yeah.
That's great. So, well, maybe the same lady will come up with the answer, the answer to the book, the book starring Karen.
If any of them are watching this, I'll go on to my Facebook account now, and there'll be about 90 million people saying, "It's this one, you silly woman."
Wonderful. Well, you've got all your books and you've got all your bits and pieces packed now, so we will send you off to the cold, very cold at the moment. Was it -11 on Shap last night? About half an hour away from the coast. So I think you might need a few thermals, but have a lovely time on the island.
Thank you very much.
Hope you're soon rescued, and thank you for a lovely bit of entertainment tonight, and also for Julia and Deems for joining as well. And I hope to catch you all soon. Now we've got many more coming up. Who have we got next week? I just need to go to, we're actually booked up now till June. Next week we've got Diane Saxon, and then following that the week after we have got Graham Smith, who writes under the name of John Ryder. And as I say, we're now booked up till the 10th of June. So we've got lots of shows coming up. Don't forget to check out the Bookends Book Club, and we'll put links on the YouTube, which will go out tomorrow. And we hope you'll all join us again. So thanks very much for attending. Have a lovely evening. Take care.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.